Okay, we're gonna do this on the Noahhide laws, and that's kind of funny how that up there looks like the NBC Peacock, but it's Noahhide code, and it says, know God, respect life, respect marriage, respect property, respect animals, and preserve justice. God gave the first 6 commandments to Adam and Hava, Eve, the first human beings. These commandments were prepared to Noah, or repeated to Noah, and a 7th commandment was added. When after the flood God established the covenant of the rainbow with Noah and all the world's creatures, the covenant is not dependent on mankind's observance of these 7 laws of Noah. Rather, the Noahide Code established the context and eventual goal for a renewed world, which this covenant could be the open and enduring expression of God or God's love for his creation. It was God's promise to all living creatures that he would never again obliterate all land life from the world, as stated in Genesis 9:11. That's kind of weird. Never again will there be a flood to destroy the earth. The covenant of the rainbow has an inner meaning, as well as, it was God's promise that he would always accept a person's sincere personal repentance if it was directed to him. From that point on, God endowed mankind with the ability to seek and gain his forgiveness, and with this he ensured that a person's freedom to choose good include the strength to prevail over animalistic and self-centered desires. Still, the 7 commandments received by Noah could have been challenged at later time by any charismatic misleader who also claimed to be a prophet. And how would a person know which course to follow? This points to the singular importance of the revelations at Mount Sinai to the Jewish people 50 days after God brought them out from slavery in Egypt. At Mount Sinai, the Creator revealed himself to a nation of at least 3 million of people, making them all witnesses to testify to their future children and the world, so that no person in any generation could arise to seriously refute the prophecy and instructions with Moses received, which is called the Torah. Included in the Torah was the Noahide Code, to be preserved for generations of mankind. The entire book of Genesis and the book of Exodus up to and including the arrival of the Israelites at Mount Sinai were dictated by God to Moses. When they arrived there was then a first covenant made between God and the Israelites on the first part of the written Torah, which includes their acceptance of the Noahhide code. Thus, the divine moral code of 7 universal commandments that was 4 days before the 10 Jewish commandments were spoken openly by God to all the Israelites, at which point they became the Jewish people. At Mount Sinai, God taught the essentials of the Torah precepts through Moses, and this is called the Oral Torah. Included in this are the details of God's directive for all Gentiles to observe the 7 Noahide commandments. These details, as God specified them to Moses, are the true foundation of the universal Noahide code. A righteous Gentile merits to receive a place in the eternal future world to come in the Messianic era. Through observance of these commandments, that is Gentiles' part in the Torah of Moses, which is God's free of life, and that's Proverbs 3:18, all begin with recognizing the perfect unity of the Creator. This does not include Jesus Christ. And here's where it started. Well, it started with Reagan, but here's
troubled times, our fifth objective. A new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, east and west, north and south, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born. A world quite different from the one we've known. A world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle. A world in which nations recognize the shared responsibility for freedom and justice. A world where the strong respect the rights of the weak. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders. What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, A world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders.
Okay. I'll come down here. I'll give you a link. You can find this, but
pleased to say I have as a guest on the show Joni Stahl, and many of you will know that Joni was for a long time a part of the A Minute to Midnight team, but she kind of gotten really busy with what she's doing with her husband John and their ministry, and so she sort of stepped away from being part of A Minute to Midnight full time. But we're going to try and have Joni come back from time to time as a guest, and I have to say I contacted Joni recently because I was thinking, man, I'm getting so many people asking me about a certain topic, and we'll get into that a little bit. And I said, Joni, help, you know more about this stuff than I do. So it's nice to be talking to you and having you back on the show today, Joni.
Yeah, it's so great to be back, and it feels really, really good. And I'm excited to just get going and to be a returning guest. This sounds so funny to call myself a guest, but we do have the Joni Stahl's field notes now, and I'm busy with that, but I will always make time for A Minute to Midnight. So
yeah, that's great, and I really do like what you and John are doing together. It's you know, I've watched a few of the videos. I don't get to watch all of them because you're pretty prolific in putting them out, but I've been pretty impressed, and I learned stuff from you guys, so that's been awesome.
yeah, you know, it's really, really something the Lord had been wanting me to do for a long time, and there just came a moment where I just went and did it. And I was nervous at first because I was always so used to being A Minute to Midnight, but I just have been on fire for Christ. The Lord has really been using me and Jonathan, and I mean, we're just pumping in the Lord, and it's just been powerful, and we're growing, and so it's just a double blessing to be back and to coordinate with you now these days. I mean, it's just a double blessing.
So you also you have the YouTube channel. I think you've just launched a new website too. You might want to tell the listeners about that, what you're actually doing.
Yeah, it's jonistahl.com. It's pretty basic, and the website is going to have, you know, you can read about how we began and a little bit of our biographies, and you can read articles and things like that. And definitely check out our YouTube channel. It's Joni Stahl's Field Notes, but when you go on, it'll say Joni and Jonathan's because Jonathan just joined me. So once in a while, you'll see him with me or just me alone. So just check it out, Joni Stahl's Field Notes, and hope you'll be blessed by it.
Awesome. And you will be putting out probably pretty regular stuff by the looks of the amount of content that you do put out, which is really awesome, and it's quite different from what we're doing here. So I basically contacted you and said, Joni, you know, I'm getting so many people asking me about the Noahhide laws. And
Yeah.
And that was, we're not going to just talk about that today, but we'll get into that a little bit. So I said, you know, what do you know about the Noahhide laws? And this is where it kind of kicked off. And interestingly, I saw an article called Campaign to Construct a Messianic Golden Royal Crown, and Rabbi Yusuf Berger, who's the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, has initiated a special project to create a golden crown to be presented to the Messiah King upon his arrival in Jerusalem. And Rabbi Berger, who's a direct descendant of King David, explained that the founding of the State of Israel and the Six-Day War were overt miracles, and that we are today living in the beginning of the Messianic era. Creating such a crown, he said, and uniting the 70 nations of the world around the project will hasten the arrival of the king. Now, basically that's, well, coming from a Judaistic point of view, and you and I, Joni, we've both got Jewish descent. So let's tell you straight up, we're not anti-Semitic, we're not anti-Israel, okay? But we're also very concerned about some of the things that we're seeing going on that are not right, and that I think are leading into the end times and in a bad way. And of course, the Messiah that these Jews are looking for is going to be what we believe is the Antichrist. So the Noahhide laws then play into this. So Joni, I'll just get you to explain what they are.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were even bringing this up, because I remember way back in the day during my research days, and that was like in the early 90s, I came across the Noahhide laws. And this was back when I didn't even have a computer and I was reading stuff. And but the Noahhide laws, back even when I saw that Bush Sr. in 1991 signed a bill on Education Day, he snuck it in. Nobody really knew about that. And it was, I believe, if I understand it right, when he did it, it was during, I think it was Rabbi Schneerson's, it was to honor him. He was a leader of the Chabad. But the Noahhide laws back then, when he signed it, it was very peculiar to me that Bush Sr. would sign that, because I thought, what does he, as president, have to do with signing a bill into Congress on Education Day, making it a law? It's a Jewish law. Okay, so I had to do a lot of more digging, but I'm just going to fast forward it to now. And that Noahhide law, let me just give you a little history on the Noahhide law. The Noahhide laws, according to the Talmud, which I'm not a fan of the Talmud because I'm just not, it's a compendium of sorts, I suppose. It's, it's
the basis of all basic modern
it's a commentary. It's a commentary from their sages, okay? And so back in that day, there was his name was Maimonides. He was alive during the 12th century. He was the foremost intellectual figure of medieval Judaism. Some people, he's mostly known, I think, these days as Rambam. Anyways, he set up a set of binding laws he believes that were given by Moses for all humanity. And because the children of Noah are the ones that are mentioned directly with the Noahhide laws that were given to Moses, meaning all the people of the world, not just Jews. See, so we have to understand it's not Jewish per se. Now Moses, it was said, was given these 7 Noahhide laws, okay? And they're very much sounding exactly like portions of the 10 Commandments. So it's very Jewish in nature. But the root of it is that when Moses, according to Maimonides, when Moses received these 7 Noahhide laws, he gave them out to all the people of Israel, but they were supposed to extend out to the children of Noah, meaning the Gentile world also. So actually it is really a one world law, okay? Because it is given to the children of Noah, which is the whole world. So when he signed that, I want to see something. I wrote something down here because I wanted to be sure about this. The Noahhide laws, 7 of them are basic, and I think that anybody can look them up and see that there are. It's like not to worship idols, not to curse God, to establish courts of justice, not to commit murder, not to commit adultery or sexual immorality, not to steal, not to eat flesh from a living animal. So that's basically something Acts chapter 15, Paul said when he was, Paul and Barnabas were speaking to James, who was the pastor of the Jerusalem Mother Church. I say the Mother Church because that was the church that everybody belonged to in those days. And so there is an apostolic decree recorded in that book of Acts 15, and it is commonly seen as a parallel to Noahhide law, but a lot of modern scholars dispute it. It's basically still observed by Eastern Orthodoxy, but what it is, the Talmud lists that there are punishments. So remember, keep this in mind that this is written into our U.S. laws. Okay, that's super important to establish before I go on, because you see, in the Talmud, basically, moreover, in Leviticus 24:16, the Talmud quotes that there's a list for the punishment for blaspheming, as they put it, the ineffable name of God, and that the punishable by death.
Can I just just interrupt very quickly, just in case people don't know? The Noahhide laws actually do not appear in the Bible. They are only found in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, which is kind of a compendium of rabbinic law written to the descendants of Noah. And so these 7 Noahhide laws, or 7 precepts, are found only in the Talmud and not in the Bible. So when they talk about them being given to, to Adam or to Noah or to Moses or whatever, this is not scripture. It's just the Talmud. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and there's 2 Talmuds. There's a Jerusalem Talmud and there's a Babylonian Talmud. And the Babylonian Talmud is the one where Jesus says to the Pharisees that, they teach for commandments of men, the traditions of men, and they don't observe God's laws. So the traditions of men, Jesus was referring to as the Babylonian Talmud. It's mystical. I don't want to even get into that, but it's actually extremely evil. I've done a lot of research on that Talmud, and it is really horrible. If any Christians read the Talmud and they think it's wonderful, there's all kinds of verses that curse Christians. But anyways, I'm going to go back to this. So this Jewish scholar, this foremost Jewish scholar, Moses Maimonides, he said, anyone who accepts upon himself and carefully observes these 7 commandments is the righteous of the nations of the world and has a portion in the world to come. So they actually omit heaven and hell, and they talk about if you adhere to these set of principles and you obey them, then you get a portion in some kind of afterlife. I think it's also very interesting to know that in 2014, there was a meeting in the UN, and there is, anybody can look it up. There's the Institute of the Noahhide Code, and you could check that out yourself. But I read it, and I'm going to read a portion of it because this was in 2014, and it was called One People, One World, a non-governmental organization with consultative status at the UN, hosted an event at 777 UN Plaza called One People, One World. The organization was conceived as an opportunity to unite the world by reaffirming the belief in the one God as the creator of all human beings, and the belief that we are all created in the divine image. The event, led by Rabbi Yaakov Cohen, gathered people from 6 different countries: Belgium, Canada, China, Israel, Moldova, and the U.S., and from all walks of life: diplomats, students, business people, journalists, and former soldiers. All attended with a commitment to securing world peace according to the 7 laws of Noah. So you have to understand. And so in Jewish law, it's very difficult to impose the death penalty on anybody. But now that it is U.S. law, this law can at any time be implemented upon us, which is very interesting, because according to the Jews, if you're to say Jesus Christ is God, well, according to Leviticus and the Talmudic writing in Leviticus 24:16, it says, it lists the punishment for blaspheming the ineffable name of God, and the sons of Noah are to be executed by decapitation by this crime, because it is the only form of blasphemy which is punishable by death, for blaspheming this ineffable name. Isn't that interesting? Because listen, in the Quran, there are 12 verses in the Quran that say that that are against Christians, and you could read them, you can do your homework, but there's death penalties involved in that. So if you kind of think about the man of sin coming in upon the scene, right? And you're looking at this guy, and you're saying Jesus Christ is the Lord and he is God. Are we not looking at a beheading scenario?
Totally. And if you look at Revelation 20 verse 4, it's basically, and I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded about the testimony of Jesus or Yeshua and for proclaiming the word of God. So, most people think, the only people that do beheading are Islam. Yeah, but we see this here, like you mentioned, in the Noahhide laws. So theoretically, it could be under, I'm not saying it will be, but it very well could be under Jewish Messiah, who we believe is the Antichrist. Should he decree it, if they believe he's the Messiah, then I can see how that scenario could play out, that those that blaspheme get the beheading. And it's really interesting on that point. An article I saw in Breaking Israel News, it says all remaining Jews, this is after the Messiah returns, according to this particular rabbi, all remaining Jews will lovingly return to the Torah and the land of Israel, and all remaining Gentiles will accept upon themselves the 7 Noahhide laws. There will be one God for all nations, the God of Torah. Jerusalem and the temple at its heart will be the undisputed center of the spiritual world to which Jew and Gentile alike will visit to experience the reality of their Creator, and that's a Rabbi Pinchas Winston. So you can see that the whole third temple thing, I've covered it before. Really, it's a New Age temple. I can see it very much being part of the one world religion, and I can see that when this Antichrist, instead of Christ, or replacement for Christ, arrives, who they think is their Messiah, and sets up in the temple potentially, by golly, if Christians don't bow down to this Messiah, then off with your heads.
For a while, like when we had, oh my gosh, I forgot his name, but he started to come out. Help me if you can't remember his name. Waleed. Remember Waleed? Yeah. Remember he came out, we were like so amazed because he was revealing things. Remember, he was a terrorist, he became a Christian, began revealing what 666 really meant by how he read it, and all these different things, and we were like so convinced. I wasn't fully convinced because I wanted to leave the door open because, for the Messiah, I believe he has to have the Jews are not going to accept anybody who's not a Jew, period. They're not going to make any exceptions. They want the real deal. But everybody was like, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. Why people, like I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus Christ, right? That has to be that. That has to be that. But now when you look at these Noahhide laws, now remember, I want to be clear, a very small number of Jewish people adhere to these Noahhide laws. Okay, so I want to be clear, Tony and I, we're not saying all the Jews out there believe this. No, they don't believe this. But there are some that do, and they got the ear of Reagan, and that was, I guess that was in 1987.
Yeah.
He signed a proclamation speaking of the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization, when they were known as the 7 Noahhide laws. So in 1981, Congress stated in the preamble to the 1991 bill that established Education Day in honor of the birthday of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, leader of the Chabad movement. So it's very, very peculiar, isn't it, when you say, what does that have to do with us? We're the American people. We live in the United States. What do the Noahhide laws mean? But notice since 1981, 1991, back when I was studying that, I learned it and it disappeared and went away. And I always wondered what happened to it, right? But look how it emerged in 2014 in the UN, how it had all these different nations. There were 6 nations altogether that joined them. And I believe, there was China. Let me see, because I wrote that down because I want to be sure that I want these nations, which are big players right now. And it says here, this 6 countries of Belgium, Canada, China, Israel, Moldova, and U.S. And since then, there has been a gathering of all nations, and they are implementing, they're agreeing about these Noahhide laws. Now, this is very dangerous because we know that the Antichrist, when we read about him in Daniel chapter 11, we know that he's a religious man, but not after the God of his fathers, nor any gods before him does he recognize. Obviously, he becomes his own God. But see, we got caught up for a little while in, well, it has to be the Muslim thing. They're going to be beheading people during the tribulation, which I have to really set that aside now, because when you look at these Noahhide laws, you look at how far back they go to the 12th century. So it's not just a 1981 thing. This is a thing. See, Satan has long-range plans too. So he is going to use, let's just look at Revelation 3:9. We're all familiar with Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. They're liars, okay? Remember when Jesus is speaking to the Pharisees in John 8:44? He said, why is it that you don't understand my word? He goes, why don't you hear it? He said, you don't hear it because you're of your father, the devil. And the lusts of your father you do. For he was a murderer from the beginning, and he abode not in the truth. For when he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. We have here the letter of Jesus Christ in Revelation 3:9. Again, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Listen, this is something very important for us to look at. Many might say, well, okay, so it's signed into law, but they're not going to do that. And I say, hey, it wasn't signed into law for nothing.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah, totally. And I think, we're not saying that all Jews that are in Israel are the synagogue of Satan, okay? I know that people go way off into that deep end and say that, and that we're all Khazars and so on. We're absolutely not saying that. We believe that God allowed the state of Israel to come into play again for the end times purpose, but that there are...
Okay, I'll put that down so you can look that up and listen to the rest of that video and read what this says about the Noahhide laws. It's too long, and I don't want to bore you, but you can look this up online. Let's see. It says, what are the Noahhide laws and why Christians should be concerned? So just look for what are Noahhide laws. So you can see the one with there's President Bush and the leaders, the rabbis, and he's got his video down here. You can read along. It tells all about that stuff. So thank you for listening. God bless you. Jesus loves you, and keep fighting, and God bless. Thank you.